So welcome everybody to our first live #ArchiChat. Thanks for coming along today, and thank you to anyone who's tuning in virtually. Welcome. The next hour we're going to chat about archaeology and drink and eat. So we might kick things off by talking about some stuff that's related to the course specifically. So a lot of people have been asking questions about the assignment. Second assignment. First assignment was on domestication, for those of you who are tuning in and not participating in the course. The second year students and third year students had to write on domestication theory of their choice. And our second assignment is for stage 2 students picking an archaeological site to write on, and for the stage 3 students they get to write either on Child's oasis hypothesis or Witt-Vogel's hydraulic hypothesis. So a lot of the questions that I've been getting relate to the stage 2, but you guys might have some questions about the third year topic. But before we get underway, it might be good if we just whip around and do some introductions first. Sorry, I'm going to put you guys on the spot and do that so everyone listening in knows who's who, why you're here. So obviously I'm Rebecca Phillips, lecturer of the course.
I'm Josh Emmett, tutor of the course.
I'm Dacia Benson, student of the course.
And why did you take this course? I'm going to make you guys say that.
Because I have a particular interest in Mesopotamian archaeology, and I really want to perhaps further pursue the transition of hunter-gatherer into state formation and how that happened, and what processes human societies underwent to get to modern civilization. I think that's a really fascinating part of human history.
Right.
What was the
Us. Oh, yes.
Don't look at the screen. Okay, Patricia.
Hi, I'm Patricia. So I've done this course last year, and I really enjoyed it. I took Origins of Civ because I am fascinated with human history, past origins of domestication and civilization, and I plan on going further into archaeology. I've done the field school, so I'm coming here to help. I did it in stage 2, so I can try and help with the stage 3 part as well.
Hi, I'm Gala. I'm pretty similar interest to these guys. I'm just fascinated by how civilizations became so great and what led to that. How did this happen? Need to know more.
I'm Ruben. I'm very much like these guys. But I also enjoy looking at social construction and how the cultures actually developed and how they were only culturally specific development and how that influenced later cultures after that.
I'm Jess, and I'm taking this course as a precursor to do honours next year. Just found really interesting so far.
I'm Rose. I basically do as many ANTHRO courses as I'm allowed to. And I plan on doing honours next year as well.
I'm Tara, and anthropology is my major, but I like the archaeology side, so take as many of those classes as I can. And I love state formation. That's like my favourite topic, so yeah, my jam.
Okay, so I'm Claudia. Should I say the class?
Oh yeah, we're the class reps.
Stage 3 rep.
Yeah.
I'm stage 2 rep. I can't think of any new reasons to have taken the course. It looked interesting. I like. I'm double majoring in history and anthropology. So. And so obviously interested in taking anthropology courses. This one looks cool.
Good. We try to make it look cool. Great. Okay. So introduction. So hopefully over the course of the semester we'll get some. We hope you guys come back again for the ArchiChat, but perhaps some other people may wish to join. Encouragement to all of you people out there watching in. Yeah, so getting back to the assignments, just some of the questions that we've had a few times, both Josh and myself, and you guys may have been wondering amongst yourselves. So we've got a mix of stage 2 and 3. So you guys that are stage 2, you've obviously, I hope you've picked a site, or you have a site that you're thinking of writing about. Yeah? Have you started to address the question yet? Or are you still in the research stages?
Still in the research stages.
Yeah. Okay.
Got supply of Red Bull for tonight. So.
Actually, they're giving out free Red Bull over.
I know. That's where I got it from.
So I've got a few questions that relate to that, and I think the first question has been about how you cope when you've picked a site and there's sort of 60 or 100 years of archaeological research to wade through and try and condense into a 1,500 word essay. So have you guys thought about how you might go about that, or any strategies that you Wikipedia? Apart from Wikipedia?
For me, last year when I did it, often the past, if you kind of go to a more recent source, they kind of, like the older sources are kind of repeated in there.
Yeah.
And you can find them, and often the more common ones keep surfacing, and that way it sort of narrows it down. And then when you do look at the abstract sources, they also cite the more common past sources. Yeah, that's what because I did Shadowhoyok. Oh yeah. Yeah, and cannot remember at the moment who was the name, forget, not Ian Hodder, but the first person.
Do you guys remember who first guy?
I can't ever remember Ian Hodder, so
James or something.
Yeah.
Well, him.
James someone. James Mallard.
Mallard, yes. So he kept coming along, so I knew, okay, he's definitely key, and so it started from that. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good strategy to go to the most recent sources. Good reference mining opportunities as well. And Google Scholar is probably going to give you that pretty effectively, and you can obviously sort by date there when you do your search. The other thing, yeah, Scopus as well.
With Scopus, you can see everything that has cited that article, and it's cited also, you can see how many have cited them, so you can try and narrow down those big articles really quick.
And if you find a more modern one, they sometimes go back to the old ones and are like, these people were really wrong. Yes. And so then you know not to use them.
Yeah, because you don't want to start writing about all that from all the old sources and realize that's all kind of outdated.
That's why I always go to the recent sources, like the safest way.
Yeah, that's
unless you're doing a critique, of course.
Yeah,
of course. Given you're giving the history of the site, so there are going to be older ideas about it that you may want to deal with or talk about. And I think for Shadowhoyok's a really good example of a site where there's a lot of literature. A lot of people have been interested in that location. So one of the things that you can do in terms of narrowing down, so once you give that overview of the history and then you want to talk about a particular theme that people have discussed, and I'll talk a little bit more about the theme in a second, then a good way is perhaps just to pick one approach and talk about that in detail rather than trying to give a huge amount of detail on everybody who's worked at that particular site. So the Fayum is another good example where there's been quite a lot of research undertaken there, and you may choose to just focus on the particular themes that were emphasised by Caden Thompson or by our research team. Yeah, so you can kind of show us that you know that there's been other research there, but then perhaps focus in on one particular approach or set of approaches that touch on. Cool. Have you guys thought about themes related to your site? Yeah, Ruben.
I have a question about the themes, because I'm looking at the broad spectrum reversion, but I also find that it's probably also important to talk about the low-level food production as well, and whether it's actually okay to do that within this assignment, because this is one theme, but they're kind of really joined together.
Yeah, that's a really good question when you've got two quite interrelated themes. Yeah, so that's fine if you can see a really good way of addressing that without turning it into a 10,000 word essay, then yeah, definitely. And the same is true of topics like ideology, religion, symbolism, and social organisation. They're all quite interlinked. Yeah, Josh, do you want to?
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you do the broad spectrum evolution, make sure that you reference Flannery.
Yes, I would.
Those happen. People forget about them. They get so focused with everything that's been done since they don't include the obvious ones. Yeah, I had some question. I had a question from a student today asking about if they defy and what themes could they choose. So, anyone got any ideas about that? Or?
Mobility?
Yeah, it's the big one. If you're looking at our research.
Paleo-environmental.
Yep. All that stuff. So that's all good. Just be aware we do know literature pretty well. So.
You guys are the literature.
Yeah.
You literally are the literature.
Perhaps some more recent literature. Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. So in terms of themes, I think that Ruben, you pretty much asked the question that I was going to talk about, which was how do you deal with very closely interrelated themes, and that's definitely something that is very likely to come up. You might talk about domestication, but then human environment interrelationships is really tightly bound in that. So
You just got to keep it relevant to the question, otherwise you end up going down a massive rabbit hole that isn't relevant, and before you know it, your word limit's gone. You haven't answered the question, so really got to stick with it.
Yeah, keep to the question. Use subheadings if that's helpful to you. Focus.
Don't be too verbose, clear and to the point. Save yourself some words.
Definitely. The last question that I had that relates to the assignment for these for secondary students was about what constitutes archaeological analysis. You guys looked at that part of the question yet? About how you would answer that?
You guys are archaeologists, so.
Yeah.
I had one question, because I'm doing Ohala too, it's my site, and there's a lot of archaeobotanical evidence. How would you frame the archaeobotanical evidence when you're trying, in terms of identification of the species? Because I've kind of just got species identification at this point, but I don't know what to actually call it.
Yeah, that's part of the botanical analysis, is that species identification. So that's a really good example of when we say analysis, it doesn't have to be XRF or radiocarbon or something that sounds fancy. It might be stratigraphic analysis. So I've talked a lot about Kenyan and stratigraphy on Tuesday. So it might be analysis of stratigraphy or distribution of the features within a site, or maybe it's the objects in relation to features. So it could be a range of different things. So excavation and the processing of that excavation data is all part of analysis. So it doesn't just have to be kind of high-end, really expensive sounding analysis. So it could be quite relatively simple through to relatively complex.
It's usually in like the first couple of paragraphs as well, I find, where they start to introduce the methods, and they introduce what they did and what they were going to do, and then go on to elaborate that, because half the time they're explaining why they did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Any other questions?
Maybe we could give like a concise answer of what archaeoanalysis is.
Well, it's any analysis that's been carried out by archaeologists.
There we go. We're brilliant. There we go.
That's what we mean by archaeological analysis.
It's pretty self-explanatory.
Although somebody did ask me the other day if they could incorporate ethnographic analysis, and that there are some instances where that's quite useful as well. Yeah. So it might be that they've used an ethnographic analogy to interpret some piece of information.
I do have one other question about previous studies.
Yeah.
When you're referring to previous studies, does that mean once, like you're comparing, for example, comparing to the Natufian and the early and middle Paleolithic, does that constitute previous studies, or does it have to be contemporary?
No, when we say previous studies, we mean previous archaeologists studying, as opposed to previous in prehistory.
So if you're talking about the Fayum, you talk about Kane Thompson, Wendell and Shield.
All right.
Yeah, not the Epi-Paleolithic or the Middle Paleolithic.
Just cool. I have a question from YouTube.
Okay.
So it says, Rebecca said to pick one approach and focus on the themes emphasized by it. But is it okay to pick one theme and focus on how different approaches have changed our ideas about that theme?
Yes, that's the short answer.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
you can definitely do that.
Yeah. And that actually makes for quite an interesting essay. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I mean, Shuttleworth for sure is a good example of that. I mean, even the Fayum arguably is examples where we've done that. Thanks for asking a question.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. How about you third years? You guys must have some questions. You finished your
I have 4 assignments due next weekend, so I had to finish it this week or I would be behind.
See, that's good time management.
I'm like two thirds of the way through, and I was proud of that.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I don't think I have any questions.
Did you do Woodfolk?
No, I did Oasis.
Did you find it easy sort of researching that topic?
Yeah. I mean, like I already knew lots about the Oasis series, that's why I picked it. So it was like pretty easy to go through research because I kind of knew what I was looking for. And then there's a lot of critiques on it, so because no one likes it anymore. So I did that, and then I talked about modern modifications. So I talked about the early Neolithic climatic, the movement in the Eastern Sahara and the Nile Valley, and how that's kind of related.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. No, that's a good picking up on that.
Yeah.
Idea. We often sort of think about that idea in those terms, that sort of abandonment of the Sahara retreat. Very much one of those key environmental hypotheses. And I'll actually talk about that more next week a little bit when we come back to Egypt. So I promise we are coming back to Egypt. Rose, are you doing Woodfolk?
Yeah, because I did braidwood, the hilly blanks in the last assignment, so I'm really sick of chart. So, and I didn't actually know anything about Woodfolk, so that was good. But I managed to find the big main text, all 500 pages of it online, so that was good.
The light reading
to get it out, yeah. But yes, I just did like one paragraph explaining the hydraulic hypothesis, and then I'm doing it just on the second paragraph, just doing like the early critiques. Then I'm gonna do a third paragraph, just mainly about like what recent people have done and how they've like modified it. But there's a lot of critiques on that one too.
There are a lot.
That is exactly how I done my
Oh, okay,
so
yeah,
it's really good.
That's what I normally do, yeah.
Yep, awesome.
So you did a division of like old and then newer.
Yeah, because I was like,
Because I was looking at it, I was thinking, should I do it in chronological order, sort of thing, or rough chronological order?
because like most of the early critiques, because I got like 2 really good articles that like from the 70s, so that, and heaps of other people from critiques from like the 60s and 70s. So I talked about that, and then I need to talk about all the recent people as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, the other option I was thinking was to separate it by ideas, but I haven't looked at it enough to.
No, there's just so many bits of the hypothesis that they all pick apart and like tear open. So it was too hard to pick clean because most of it's like torn apart.
Yeah. I just like my middle paragraph is critiques, but it kind of goes like kind of chronologically. So I talk about like the main critiques, and it kind of goes into like Zeta and their critiques, and then I talk about my third one is like the modern one. So what's actually still useful about it.
Yeah.
So
and what people are still using.
Yeah.
Okay,
So it's kind of chronological.
Yeah, so you can talk about like the first critiques and the later ones and how people have revisited the theory and how they're using it. Yeah, that's what I've done.
So we got another question from YouTube. Will the information contained in next week's lecture on Karahuuk be pertinent to the assignment if that's the site we chose?
Quite possibly, yes.
Oh.
Definitely come to that class. But I will be talking about a few different sites, so that won't be the only site that I'll talk about.
Readings that are related to the third year's assignment. So some kind of later in the semester, if you want to read it. Or?
Yes, certainly when it comes to child, the Zeta Zeta's discussion is definitely really good. And I've mentioned a few of the environmental hypotheses in previous lectures. So I think back in week 3 was paleo environment. So there's some in there. And then, yeah, Whitfogel, you can jump ahead a little bit to the end of the course, so the last 2 weeks. And probably a lot of that content will actually come in from the lectures rather than from the readings explicitly, because as it will become apparent, there's quite a lot to say on state formation. So it is a bit distributed. So some of the content's in the reading, some of the content is in lecture. So, but yeah, Rose, did you obtain that text from Google Books? Was it or through the library?
No, I think I just Googled it, and it is this PDF download.
Yeah.
So
Quite a few books like that.
Yeah.
nowadays.
Yeah.
I found a very good resource if you guys want to know about it. It's LibGen. You just say LibGen. I didn't know about this, and I'm like 4th year, and it's so bitter. But you can get whole books, like all the really old ones. So I got like Child's one. Braidwood is on there as well.
We can just use it through the e-proxy through the uni, right?
Yeah, it's not. I don't think it's even connected to. It's
So
just
it's
Well, a lot of those older texts there's less copyright.
yeah, but you get like the whole thing in a nice PDF.
A lot
it's
of them
essentially
are
torrenting
copyright.
books.
And I can put it on my iPad and like.
Yeah.
I was going to point that out.
It's kind of like archive.com or .org as well. You can get a lot of older text with that as well.
Yeah, because if you do Google Scholar, they bring it up with like the Google Book ones, which you can't access. Which
Some of them you can access, or that have a preview.
a preview, but then you go through it, it's always like, oh, this page is this.
Yeah, sometimes it's enough, and I without actually having the whole book.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can just use what's in the preview.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
Yeah.
Like a whole page missing, you're like, oh, I hope nothing important will look
Basically.
And if you like, if
Screw you,
you
get
search
it.
for keywords, it gives you like the specific.
Yeah, and then they're all in
pages,
yellow.
and you're just like, yeah.
But the readings we assigned for the course, there was no accident there, so they were a good place to start.
Yeah, and I just will reiterate though that a lot of that content will come from. I just quickly reminded myself what the readings were for week 12. And 12 in particular is probably more relevant to the Oasis hypothesis question if you're going to answer on that, whereas Whitfogel I'll probably deal with more in week 11, and that'll be a little bit outside the reading. So I've only assigned one reading for week 11, and that's to try and be kind to you guys at the end of the semester. So yeah, more of that content is going to come from in class. So I do encourage you to check out those sources that are available online. The internet's a wonderful place these days. Look at what we're doing right now.
There's 7 people.
Oh, yeah. Oh, 8. Oh, welcome.
You guys have nothing better to do on a Friday afternoon.
Hey.
We clearly don't.
Well, otherwise you'd be figuring out your
questions
Patronus.
coming?
Hey, I've already done it. Everyone's already done it.
Nope.
Oh, except for Josh.
All right, so yeah, any other questions or comments about the assignment? Tips? Ruben.
I do have one question. Because Ohalo 2 is really recent compared to such as Katahoya. How would we sort of frame previous studies? Because it's only been in publication for less than 30 years.
Yeah, well, you can only go back to when the site was actually discovered.
Yeah.
And this, in the case of Ohalo, it was because of really amazing particular set of environmental variables that led to its discovery. So yeah, you're only going to be able to go back as far as that.
Yeah.
And that's completely fine.
Yeah, because I found within the literature, a lot of the ideas have stayed relatively the same. And there's
That's
no-
right, yeah, because it's not had a huge history
Yeah.
of investigation. It's had the benefit of very good recovery plus really good analysis. Whereas, you know, if you're working on a site like Abydos, then of course you've got this whole history of colonial archaeology to get through. Yeah. So no, that's totally fine. Yeah.
So we're just frame the same.
That's your history. That's your history of the site
All right.
from discovery.
All right. Brilliant. Thank you.
All right. No more assignment questions. No? All right.
If any more come up, we can answer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So if you're out there watching live, you can feel free to jump in and ask a
Give
question.
you 8.
Yeah.
Like 7 now.
Oh, we lost someone.
Didn't mean what I said before, guys.
Well, let's change topic then and maybe
They're gone.
So we have a few questions that relate to the content of the course more generally, and a few things that Josh and I have noticed from the quiz in particular. And the first thing I want to start with is a question that we asked in quiz number 4, 5. It was quiz 5, wasn't it?
Oh,
It was like last week.
yeah, it was
Yeah, week quiz 6, I think.
Okay, quiz 6.
Yeah.
And that was a question that asked about what cortex is. And this is something that we talked about quite a lot in the tutorial in week 6 where we were in the lab. And that was the last day of class before the break, so more than a few people didn't turn up to that class. But what we'd like to do is just go over that concept because it's actually quite an important one to understanding a lot of the mobility research that we have done recently in the Fayoum. And it's something that relates to this method that we've used called the cortex ratio in order to document movement of people. So it's that idea of kind of a hard evidence for movement. It's not refitting, but something a little bit different. So to that end, I brought in some rocks. But because I'm sure somebody here knows very well what cortex is,
I thought I did now.
who wants to jump in and give me a definition?
It's like the weathered outside.
Oh, yes, I got that one right.
Yeah. Good. Okay, so does someone want to actually pick up a rock and hold it up to the camera? The camera's just sitting
Thought I
there.
knew this, but
Should we zoom
Actually,
in?
Jess might be closer. There we go.
Right it.
Ooh.
No, terrible.
You need a lighter one.
So that's like fully.
So this is almost all covered in cortex, and then if you have it inside, that's sort of the main inner part of the rock, but
That's the not cortex.
it looks quite different. You know, the inside of the rock looks quite different from the outside because of the weathering.
Not cortex.
So it's a really useful thing because I think I used the analogy of the apple core or the apple in class to explain how the cortex ratio works. Someone want to attempt to repeat that analogy? Rose, I'm gonna call on you because you've done lithics before. So roughly how does it work? So if you had an apple and your apple was your core, and you can you can use props.
Well, like
Squiggles.
no, I'm not hungry. Like this one has basically fully cortex, and as you take away parts of the rock there, you're left with less. Like the inside parts here would have less cortex on it. So by the time you end up, it's basically almost all of that. And at a site, you can tell if an assemblage has had stuff taken away or put in. If there's more cortex, that means stuff has been brought in. Yeah, and if like the artifacts have less cortex, it means they've been moved away to other sites.
Yeah. So it kind of requires you to know a couple of things. And the first thing that's really important in the cortex ratio is that all of your raw material is fully cortical. So it doesn't really work when you have situations where it's not fully cortical. So in New Zealand with a material like obsidian, it doesn't really work very well because we don't know that it's fully cortical. But in Egypt, and that cobble that you picked up, the fully cortical one, that's actually from the Nile Valley. So it's not an archaeological specimen, but it is a geological specimen, and that contains something that's really similar to what we would expect to see in the Fayoum setting. So you need your raw material to be fully cortical for it to work, but if you know that and you know roughly how big your cores are, you can actually estimate how much cortex you would expect to see if everything had been reduced and discarded in one place. So you're kind of working on the assumption that in an ideal setting, if somebody picks up a core, produces some flakes and drops everything in one place, and in that setting your cortex ratio should equal 1 or very close to 1. If that person then picked up the core that was partly still had a bit of cortex left on it, so like the brown one there. Yep.
The brown one.
The dark brown. that's still got a bit of cortex left on the outer surface. But if we just found that in isolation, we would know that somewhere in the world, in our sampling universe, there should, in theory, be some other flakes that have cortex on them. So we can sort of look at what's left in an assemblage and figure out perhaps people have moved stuff elsewhere. So we might not know where they moved to, but we just know that they moved somewhere. And by looking at the detailed composition of the assemblage, we might be able to make some inferences about perhaps how far they moved or what they sort of took with them, what they might have selected to take with them. So that's sort of the gist of the cortex ratio. So in Fayum, we've got lots of evidence for movement of flakes and cores that have cortex on them, and in some settings there's more cortex being moved, and in other settings there's much less cortex being moved. So that paper that we wrote, that Simon Holdaway and I wrote, is really about looking at that variability between epipaleolithic sites and Neolithic sites across the Fayum. And what we see, as you guys now know from class this morning, even within one phase, there's lots of variability. Even within the Fayum, there's variability. So not all the sites look the same. There's lots of differences. That's what that method is about.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How do you get around, like, rocks are all different sizes. I mean, how do you get around that? I mean, is it just that in the Fayum there's more, like, most rocks are similar size?
That's a really good question. That's probably the number one question that we get asked, not by students, but by our peers. Because it does affect the, has potential to affect the calculations. Now, luckily for us, all our rocks are roughly the same size. So that makes it really, really easy. But some of our colleagues have done a lot of work in using experimental assemblages. So that's us sitting in a lab with rocks doing reduction experiments ourselves. And they've actually been able to show that in many instances there's actually not too much effect, or we can control for the effects of variability in size.
I have a question as well. How much do we know about natural breakage rather than physical breakage?
Another really good question. So yeah, natural breakage of rock occurs, but the answer to that is kind of contextual. To get conchoidal fracture, like you would expect to see with hard hammer percussion, you have to have quite specific setting for that. And in a case like the Fayum, it's very, very flat. So the chances of that happening are incredibly low. And then you'd be looking at somebody picking up a rock and dropping it. And then is that intentional or is that accidental? So when you've got thousands and thousands and thousands of them in very discrete clusters across the landscape, it's pretty hard to maintain an argument about natural breakage. But in the past, a lot of people believed, before sort of modern prehistory, modern archaeological thought, believed that they were the result of
Lightning strikes.
Very good. Remember that from 101?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, good question though. And I will say that we've had situations in environments where there is a lot of slope and potential for breakage that you do get fragmentation that is natural, that looks very much like what you would expect to see. And we have that actually on Great Mercury Island, which is a big research project.
So also in the Fayum, when you first go there and you're not quite sure on stone artifacts, because you learn here in the lab and you see some stuff in the field, this is a completely different context. What you come across is all these things that look like flakes to the untrained eye. They're actually heat fractured. So over thousands of years, the freezing and heating process just naturally fractures these rocks. And to the untrained eye, they can look like flakes, but that's when you look for the concordial fracture.
Yeah. So those landmark features that I was talking about in week 2.
So all of us newbies go forward and flag everything, and then Rebecca and Simon come and find us, and it's just like, no, that's natural.
It is a bit of practice though. I mean, Rose and Jess, you guys have analysed lithics before, and you know that. The more you do it, the easier it gets.
Yeah, when you start off, you're just really slow.
Yeah.
And you're just like, is that a platform? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you get there. All right. Other questions? Oh yeah, from the quiz, the other thing that came up this week was that the question, I forget which number question it was, but it was about the time lag between plant and animal domestication.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was was asking about whether or not there is still, or we still consider there to be a 1500-year gap between plant domestication and animal domestication.
It said it in the abstract.
Yeah.
And the conclusion.
Yeah, the conclusion.
Oh my god, it was right there.
Where do you think I get most of the questions?
Oh, so that's a weird theory.
I try and make it easy for you guys.
Also in the lecture as well.
Yes, it was. Okay, so do we want to talk about that? Because it is an interesting concept. I mean, it's not a, for a long time it was the prevailing view that there was a massive divide.
What evidence was there that there was a 1500-year gap?
So you guys remember why people thought there was that gap? I mean, what's Zeta's main?
Oh, because morphological changes occurred.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, that's
Yeah. So there was it really relates to the animal domestication question and how we view that. So in the past, it looked like there was quite a big lag between plant and animal domestication because you've got that time difference, and probably it's true for plants as well. So there's that lag potentially of where we actually see morphologically domesticated plants versus very heavy and intensive exploitation of their wild. With all the technology, nickel, grinding stone technology.
It comes down to those sharp divides between domesticated and undomesticated, now more processes, blurry fields, if you will. So we kind of shifted the goalpost, so to speak. So that's why
Yeah, and then you've got all the regional geographic variability.
new collection techniques. I mean, the way that we do archaeology now is a lot more methodical and accurate than it was 20, 30 years ago even. So these smaller materials are being found in new ways. So there's the example from the R12 cemetery in Sudan that was in the paper that you're writing.
Yeah, the phytoliths.
So there's no evidence for domesticated wheat or barley, but they've got phytolith remains on dental calculus of those two domesticated species. So we're finding that particular species, but we can tell it's there based on what people have been eating. So
Were they the ones from Khartoum or nearby Khartoum?
it was near Khartoum. The R12 cemetery, which has a bit of name in that.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting case where you don't find the macro-botanical remains, but...
And that material is earlier than the Fayum domesticated material. So.
And I think it's interesting in the case of the Fayum because when Caden Thompson first excavated at COMK and COMW, she never recovered any domesticated wheat or barley. And the only reason she found it was because of the cave pits and the particular way that they excavated those, whereas their methods of excavation at, say, COMK, there was no way they were ever going to recover macro-botanical remains. Yet when we went back there in 2007, because we knew that we needed to be more careful in that sense, we actually ended up finding them. So.
But the techniques have changed. I mean, Caden Thompson, when she was working at Hamamia in Middle Egypt, one of the things she writes in her book was that I wasn't there for the end of the excavation. The workmen did it, and neither sherd nor anything else that they brought back was recorded because it wasn't diagnostic, typologically important. That's almost word for word what she said. Basically, I don't think this was important, so we didn't record it. So you can kind of get from that the way they were looking at things. It wasn't just looking for the small little, it was looking for the obvious, nice stuff.
Yeah,
Well,
Petries.
Caden Thompson was somewhat influenced by Petrie.
Yeah. She had some interactions with them.
Falling out, as it were.
Yeah, actually, when I cool little story. When I was working at Abydos, one of my colleagues was digging in the Shunazabib, which is Casa Kimley's big funerary enclosure, and she was actually excavating the Petrie house. And when she was digging the Petrie house, he kind of lived inside it. He built this tiny little, it's so small, I can't even believe that he lived there. But yeah, he built this tiny little house to live inside there while he was working there. And as they were excavating, they actually found correspondence from Caden Thompson where she had sent him examples of lithics that she had found. So it was pretty cool. Yeah. Nice connection there. And he'd obviously thrown them away as well.
Well, that's not important.
She wasn't meant to find what she did in the fight. She was there to something else.
Yeah, and then of course Petrie was sort of the go-to guy at the time because he'd been working in Egypt. And Kate Thompson, she came to archaeology quite late in her career. So.
Yeah, she was present at the Treaty of Versailles, so conference actually. Interesting history.
Oh.
Little known fact.
I'm pretty sure that's right. It's all about I'll check that next time.
Yeah. Double check.
I'm pretty sure that's right.
Yeah.
Old.
It's European.
Germany just
School.
All right. Well, that's actually the end of my list of questions. So, do you guys have any questions, or do we want to talk about something related to archaeology?
Yeah. What can I tell people?
Kate Thompson was at the Treaty of Versailles.
Yay.
That's a cool fact.
So, yeah, as an archaeologist or as somebody who studies archaeology, you'll commonly get questions like, did aliens build the pyramids? Did the Chinese make it here first? And I think all you can do is, sometimes you can't change people's minds, all you can do is present them with the information, right? I mean, it's a bit like, any situation where people have a very strong belief about what happened in the past. Our job is not to shove our opinions at people and expect them to adopt them. All we can do is present the information in the best possible way. Give them the information, give them references to go look up, and then let them engage. I think that if people engage in that process of discovery themselves, that's quite often a better strategy at getting them to change their minds. But you will get it. I always get it all the time. So it's just one of those things that is part of the job, and it will probably never go away.
You get it from family members, the public.
Yeah. Slightly off topic. Do you remember in Friends when Phoebe's asking Ross?
Yeah.
No, evolution.
Which is what reminded me of.
I get that a lot as
And
well.
then she
Yeah.
got him to doubt himself.
Yeah.
Oh,
all the time, and I'm like, no.
Yeah.
no,
What?
That's
that's
just the
dinosaurs.
acceptance that if there is a plausible argument, there's a scientific method.
Yeah.
You accept that.
Yeah,
as opposed to
exactly.
rigorously believing in it, hell or high water.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know the episode you're talking about. That always bothered me because he was technically following the scientific method.
Yeah.
It wasn't a breaking of his beliefs at all.
Yeah.
Because it's not a belief. It's a
And there are a lot of people equally who come from a scientific perspective who are very dogmatic and use language that is very much more bearing on religion. In fact, Christine Giroux, who is a social anthropologist in the department, she teaches a really good course on religion, and she's always really fascinated by that sort of overlap sometimes between what we think as being Western science on the one hand versus other thoughts. So as you move on through archaeology, you'll start exploring some of those complexities. So if you do field school, we can get in.
I have a friend who's Catholic, and he does not believe in evolution. And I said to him, how do you explain like skin tone, for example? And he said, a genetic mutation happened which allowed lighter skin tone, and then that was an advantage in populations where there was less sunlight. And I'm like, so a genetic mutation happened, and then that became advantageous to people in the past, and then that genetic mutation was the norm. And you don't believe in evolution?
That's weird.
I know.
Explain.
Like I said, all you can do is present.
Just start nodding and just go, yeah, you do.
you don't believe it.
proved
Yeah,
me
sure.
wrong.
Yeah.
You got me.
The world is
You
6,000 years old.
I know.
But it's a really important part of you guys coming here to the university and getting that education. You're getting a wide variety of perspectives and data sets and ways of thinking about the world.
And you can educate people.
Yep.
Like we get people coming out to Great Mercury Island quite often. They'll ask us all kinds of questions.
Yep.
We'll find in New Zealand people that were educated in the 50s and 60s were taught that the Moriori were the first people here, and that narrative. But we know that's not the case anymore. And we explain it to them, and they're very interested. Some of them just don't believe us because that's what we've always thought. But at the same time, we just try and tell them, and that's all you can do at the end of the day. I mean, some of them might go look something up and learn what we currently know, and other people just will.
Some people love conspiracy theories,
Oh, yeah.
and
I mean, who doesn't like to think
You
of
can enjoy
really
it.
more complex than it actually is. But when you take a course like this, when you realise that the past is incredibly complex and people have really interesting ways of doing things, and they were really skilled at interacting with their environment or interacting with each other, and we don't kind of need aliens to explain those processes.
And I mean, if you want something complex, I mean, someone was asking me today about head hotters entangled. And it's quite an elegant idea, but at the same time, starting to think about all the connections that are possible now and in the past between everything is, I mean, even our best supercomputers, I don't think could do it right now. If we could account for every variable. So, you know, I mean, it's, if you want something complex, then
Yeah.
although the world's just as complex.
That's why we're here, to study the past and try and figure out a little bit more of that complexity. Any other questions?
You guys got anything
Discussion
from
points?
Facebook? Or?
No.
I haven't checked Canvas.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know.
I have one about methodology in archaeology today. Is it really standardised or around the world, or is it? Or is there still room for improvement?
I got this very disappointing talk from Josh the other day, who
Oh, we got a question.
who killed my European dream.
We've got one question. Okay, there's a serious one and a joking one, so we'll go with the serious one first.
I think I might have asked that one.
About the paleo diet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
There's
So,
a serious one as well.
Do you want to ask your question then?
I think I worded it better in writing.
Okay, so wondering how you deal emotionally, working in the field it's related to, so deal emotionally with instances such as when you returned to the storage pits and found they'd been completely destroyed, so the ComK incident. Yeah, just how we deal with that. I mean, ComW is another event that we suffered a couple of times.
It's really hard as an archaeologist because you do develop a sort of personal connection. And I've worked in the Fayoum for a really long time now, and you know, I was there when we rediscovered them, and we were so excited about that prospect of having this fantastic record with modern recording techniques and all of the things that we could do. So yeah, you do, you know, you feel like you are in some way attached to that environment, and it has definitely a significance for you. So it is hard to kind of step back and then have to deal with the practicalities of when you have looting or people destroying the site for maybe agriculture or whatever. It's not always looting for, you know, people who want to sell stuff on eBay, but you know, sometimes it is because people are expanding their farm and they need more space for fields and so on. So yeah, it is hard, and you know, you probably go through a moment of tears and fury, and then sometimes you've got to pull it together. I think the case in 2012 when we came to ComW and we actually stumbled across people who were in the midst of looting, digging a hole, and
I mean, you got to look at it. I mean, there was definitely a ringleader in that situation, but the people he'd employed were just locals who were just looking for some money to get by. I mean, you got to put it from their context. It's a job's a job. I mean, the ringleader was not a deal, but yeah, I was quite angry when we first saw them.
yeah, I think a few people had to kind of walk away and
it was kind of
calm down.
when we saw them, it was kind of like a charge, you know. But we had the police with us, and the director, Velika Vrendrik, she sat them down and explained to them, like, there's no gold here, there's nothing of value. And they've actually dug about 17 meters below where the archaeology was. So it's not, you know, we just saw 10 meters, it was 12 meter holes. But we just had to explain to them, there's nothing here, you know, you're not going to find what you're looking for. I mean, it is quite devastating, because after we left, we got some satellite imagery, and Google Earth's obviously updating, and they've just built a highway through the Fayoum. So
that's not a looting.
it's not a looting activity, but you do see the road goes through the areas where we'd worked in 2012, and it's hard to think, well, we were just there and now it's gone. But also, you get to watch it, you speculate, oh, the road looks like it's going up there, and you see where they've mined for sand close to the sites that we haven't quite got to yet. And it is quite, you do, after a while, have to distance yourself from it, because when you're there, you become a bit emotionally attached, I think, and it's just, you've got to stop looking at Google Earth after a while.
Yeah, I mean, it is good in a sense we considered a bit of remote monitoring from Google Earth, but it is sad because, you know, we had all these plans to go back and do this future work, and then you sort of see this over a few months, this highway being constructed over the top of your survey area.
And I mean, things like they built a highway that goes up the escarpment. The escarpment's beautiful scenery. We've got photos on canvas, I think.
Yeah, they have shown photos in class.
But it's going to, well, we haven't seen it since, but it's going to have a big ramp they've built going up of it, which they build with the engineer's technique of just layering sand, so it's going to be quite large. I've seen it on satellite.
Yeah, I think they actually showed a photo of Caden Thompson's crew hauling the Model T
So
forward.
these guys have built big, but it's...
So there's a road there now, she'll be happy.
But it's just trying to, you've got to distance yourself in these situations, and just got to accept that this is the way it is. And in archaeology, I mean, the way we work is quite privileged in that we can go to a place and investigate it for a long period of time, whereas in commercial archaeology, you know, if you were attached, it's going to be destroyed in 2 days anyway, so you've got to just get on with it.
True.
And I was there during the revolution in 2011 at Darkler Oasis, and that was quite interesting as well, because looting was obviously going on everywhere. There was some hairy situations in the Nile Valley with other excavations, and every day we'd get a call from someone's friend in a dig saying, we've been pulled out, there's planes leaving, there's chartered planes leaving. The American house next to ours, one evening they said, we might be called out. The next day they were on a bus to the airport out the country. So that was quite an interesting time, but you really got a sense for how the archaeology was perceived and how things were going on from that angle of it, and you really just had to distance it and say there's nothing you can do. I mean, we see the Fayum Road going through, there's literally nothing we could do even if we wanted to. You know, we can't go back there to excavate it more right now because of the security. We can't stop the road being built. You know, there's just got to move on and deal with what we have.
We've got some really good colleagues in the SCA who are really have been really proactive and helpful in terms of helping us preserve some areas. So we should say that in the midst of all of this, we've had excellent opportunities to preserve. I mean, ComK is a really good example where that's in the middle of a bunch of agricultural fields, so you'd think we'd never have a hope of preserving that, and they were incredibly good at making sure that happens.
And development's going up all around what remains of the K pits, but that's preserved. So
so we've had some wins. We've had a few losses, but there have been some positive.
No, that's it. You just got to, you win some, you lose some, and you can't really get too attached with it because at the end of the day, it's happening everywhere.
Yeah, and then you go through a weather situation.
You just look at the news every other week and something or other's happening. So.
Yeah. And that's hard because not everybody appreciates the past in the way.
But it's not just modern events. I mean, Caden Thompson excavated ComW with excruciating detail for the time, and a whole heap of other sites that she had really detailed notes and section drawings of, much more than what was published, and they were destroyed in the war. Same with Youngker's research from Benny Salama with a lot of the material from there. So we just, you know, archaeology is destructive in itself, and if the records aren't properly preserved and presented, then that's as good as just having it bulldozed. But, you know, we've just got to make do with what's left. We can't change it. Anyone knows if Doctor Who's watching, though, please. I have a time place in London to get the notes before the building's burned, so nothing's wrong with the timeline.
If only we had a TARDIS. My job would be so much easier.
Well, we can talk about that another time.
Yeah, that's a good theory.
Because Simon Holloway has some good thoughts on this.
He's asked that.
A historian's job would be easier.
Next week we can talk about that, I think. So do you want to touch on the paleo diet while we're here?
Yeah. Paleo diet, yes.
I just find it so ironic that it's actually exclusively Neolithic, everything they eat, pretty much, unless they're out like foraging their own like undomesticated plants or hunting wild game, they're still eating a Neolithic diet.
Do you guys sort of think anything about the notion of the paleo diet? Just like
There's no one.
right.
You did it for, you did it in 201. Was anyone in 201 last semester? We did a whole class on
evolution,
yeah, we did a whole class on it, and they did a TED talk, and it was really interesting because she showed how much like how much you would have to eat of everything to like, and how everything obviously is so different to what it is now because we've changed it.
It wouldn't be a paleo diet even now because you can't call it a paleo diet because it's never going to be.
You can't eat what they ate because it was like
But the paleo diet where? The European paleo
Yeah,
diet?
yeah,
The
yeah.
paleo diet, you know, like...
And everyone thinks it's just purely meat.
The
when
one
there's so
diet.
many legumes and vegetation involved
Yeah,
as well.
depending on the availability.
Yeah.
It's like,
And like our bodies are so different. Like she was saying, the amount of sugar we have in like a drink, they would have to eat like
2 meters of sugar cane.
yeah, 2 meters of sugar cane, and they wouldn't even be able to do it. Like they would like just die before. And it was just like
I think there's a moral
literally
about
die.
healthy eating. In
yeah.
Basically, be grateful for how much sugar we should
Yeah.
be these days.
Enjoy your Coke.
Yeah.
But also on the flip side with the paleo diet is that they were like foraging and hunting, and actually that's like burning calories.
Yeah,
which is why I think they do.
But if you were to eat,
But if we still ate the paleo diet, we wouldn't have like civilization.
The animals weren't as fatty as they are now as well.
No, they were a lot leaner.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they were leaner.
But like, if you think about it, I mean, I think I was reading somewhere that for every calorie they, exerted, they gained back. So in order to procure 1,000 calories, they had to exert 1,000 calories. So it kind of like balanced itself out. But yeah, we don't do that anymore. But if you think about it, right, like they couldn't spend those calories doing other things like art or literature or building things or being
Playing video games.
exactly. Or I don't know, whatever.
Pinnacles of civilization.
Peppers has released a book,
Playing Pokemon
and he's
Go.
compared all of the modern fruits and nuts and vegetables to the examples we have from the archaeological record. Of course, in Greco-Roman times, that big and now this big. And a lot of the morphological changes in fruits and vegetables that we see to make them large are actually in the past couple of hundred years. They're not.
Same with animals as well.
Yeah. So.
On the outside, they're all more delicious.
Yeah, that was also the point. That they would have tasted so gross.
Yeah, that's true.
That's actually something that would be good for.
We've all heard legends of the lost banana, right? Like,
Yeah, not what is the paleo diet, how tasty was the
yeah. I mean, like, no herbs, no.
What's really
like,
important.
I mean, like,
were like all seeds or something.
yeah, they were entirely seeds.
Gross. Like,
yeah, and now we've only got like Cavendish.
Yeah, some people wouldn't miss the nuts.
Yeah.
It's an appropriated term, the paleo diet. It doesn't
Yeah.
quite mean what we mean in archaeological
No, I
circles,
think
but
defenders of the paleo diet would certainly say, oh, well, it's not.
I don't think anyone in archaeology has ever called it the paleo diet.
It's just a low carb diet at the end of the day.
I mean, I guess if we're talking about who copyrighted it first, they can.
But it's an unsustainable way to move forward. I mean, if we all ate like just the paleo diet, we'd need like 5 planet Earths in order to sustain the amount of.
So they're just being selfish, really.
Basically, I mean, like
When it
with
comes
the modern trajectory of human population, we're all gonna have to eat, like really plant-based diets if we want to, continue on the population trajectory in which we're going. And so, like, people clinging onto the paleo diet is kind of like this really selfish, environmentally destructive thing, It's true, though.
Well, we'll leave that for the to decide, but do we have an opinion on that? So I think on that note, we'll probably wrap up and eat
Shut it
some
down.
junk food.
Yeah.
So thank you everybody for joining us today, and we hope this will be the first of many chat sessions. I hope everyone had a good time. Interesting discussion.